What is up, guys? Welcome to today's video. My name is Nick Palladino. I'm 26 years old and I'm a real estate investor here in the Phoenix area. Today's video is going to be talking about my two rental properties. I made a few videos on these before, but this is a little bit more specific. It's a little bit more of a niche, and that is talking about student rentals versus family rentals. For those of you guys that have tuned in to the previous videos, you guys know that both of my rental properties are actually student rentals. So I'm gonna give you guys the pros and cons, the benefits and the downsides to having student rentals. I'm gonna break pretty much everything down for you and just get a little bit more in depth on student rentals in general. So sit back, relax, enjoy the video, and as always, if you guys have any questions, comment down below. And before this video gets started, if you guys can drop a like, it would really help me out. Any video suggestions as well are always welcome in the comment section down below. So a little bit of backstory on both my rentals, super quick. I bought them both for around $200,000. They're both 4 bedrooms and they're both within a quarter-mile of Grand Canyon University. A big reason why I bought these, and pretty much the only reason why I bought my second property to be specific, is because I wanted it to be a student rental. So first thing we're going to talk about is not actually the pros of a student rental, but we're going to be talking about the downsides. So the first downside to renting my house out to students as opposed to a family is just having more leases. Most of the time as a student rental, you're gonna actually be renting out per room as opposed to per house. I only have 2 properties, but I have 8 different leases from 4 bedrooms here, 4 bedrooms there. So just alone collecting payments can be a little bit stressful. I'm lucky enough that all my payments go through either Venmo or Cash App, so it's very streamlined and very straightforward. I think 6 of my tenants are on Venmo and then the other 2 are on Cash App. Obviously it's a younger generation, so they're very tech savvy, and it's very easy for me as well to kind of keep note of everyone that's paid me. Obviously keeping note of eight different leases isn't like a huge deal, but it is a little bit harder than just collecting 2 separate payments. Another thing that I personally noticed is most of the time with a student rental, this is going to be their first time that they've either lived on their own or like at least off campus. So just from owning these 2 properties for 8 months, I've gotten so many just like, I wouldn't say stupid, but unnecessary phone calls about things that I shouldn't be involved in. I had one altercation between like 2 roommates a couple months ago, and they called me to try to resolve it, which was like I don't know what they wanted me to do, but it's just stuff like that. I had one specific example that I always remember this, but it was like one of the first days they moved in, and they said the air conditioning wasn't working, so I was really stressed out. I sent someone out there, and sure enough, they just had to turn on the switch to get the air conditioning going. So there's been a few phone calls like that where it's like, if someone was more experienced as a tenant, then they would have figured it out on their own. Now the third downside with student rentals is lease durations. Now for me personally, I won't usually take any tenants unless they're on a 1-year lease, just because it's easier for me to kind of cycle in that way. But there's a lot of missed opportunities that I had from like students that just want like summer housing, or students that just want housing during the school year. And then I've also had tenants sign up for a year lease, but they don't fully understand it. So like 8 months into the lease, I have one girl actually right now that I'm dealing with. She's like, okay, I'm ready to move out. And I'm like, you signed a year lease, like you literally have it under contract with your signature. It doesn't work like that. But it's just kind of hard to explain to them, like they're in contract now, like this is serious, that they can't just like break the lease without having consequences. So I'm dealing with that right now. With this specific tenant, she's moving out because of a direct impact that the coronavirus has had. So I was a little bit more understandable with her, and that's why I'm working with her to get her moved out, keep her security deposit, and hopefully I'll be able to find someone within the next 4 weeks. Now one of the obvious downsides is just having more tenant turnovers, meaning if I were to get a family renting out one of my houses, they're more likely to stay in the house longer than a year as opposed to students. A lot of the students I have in my properties right now are either juniors or seniors, which means they're moving out after 1 year exactly, so I don't have really a good chance that they're going to stay longer. And obviously if the more tenant turnover you have, the more chances of vacancy you have. I haven't any problems with this right now, but I can see it being a problem in the future, as opposed to having like a family in there for 3 to 5 years with not a lot of turnover whatsoever. I don't have to worry about vacancies or anything like that. And then the final downside, and this is more of a personal thing for me, but just internal issues. If you don't have tenants that all know each other before they move in, which in my case I didn't. I had 2 friends that knew each other, and then I had another group of friends that knew each other, and they combined into one house. Now there was a little bit of tenant conflict. One tenant would always bring someone over that the other tenants didn't want over. They got me involved for some reason. I really can't do anything. In the contract there's like a 48-hour, as long as they don't stay after 48 hours, anyone's allowed in the house. But it's just small stresses like that where I get a text message or a phone call from the tenants saying, oh, like so and so's over again, like can you kick them out? I'm like, I literally can't do anything. So that just probably my own issues. I'm sure some other student rental properties have had to deal with that too. Now, one thing that I can see as being a problem, but it actually hasn't impacted me directly, is just destruction of a property. I hear all the time that like there's party houses and stuff like that, and people move off campus to an off-campus house so they can have parties. I'm lucky enough that I have 8 respectful tenants that haven't really destroyed any of their properties. I actually went and checked on both of my properties the other day, and they're both in really, really good condition still. So I'm grateful that I have respectful tenants and they clean up after themselves, but I can see that being a problem in the bigger picture with student rentals. Now that all the cons are out of the way, we're gonna move on to some of the pros. Now, there's way less benefits to having student rentals as opposed to cons or downsides, but the upside or the benefit to having student rentals, I would say, outweighs all the problems that I just listed. The biggest thing on why I love student rentals, and I'm sure everyone that has a student rental, all landlords can say the same thing, and that is cash flow. For me specifically, I rent each of my properties out for $500 to $600 each a month over what I can get a family in there for. So for example, one of my properties, I can probably get a family in there for $1,200 to $1,300 a month, but I'm renting this property for $1,800 a month, which is about a $600 cash flow a month difference. Now you do that on 2 properties, that's about $1,200 a month. If you do that over a year, that's like $14,400 or something like that extra a year for having student rentals as opposed to a family. So everything I just said kind of balances out with that sort of cash flow, because me, I have the time, I have the patience. I can see if you're like a retired and you're just trying to have a very, very passive income, that student rentals probably aren't for you, but I'm willing to put up with all that. I'm willing to put up with some text messages and stuff like that just because the cash flow is just so much better. Now, if you do that over a 10-year span, that's $140,000 difference. So I'm looking at it more of a long-term thing. I just have to be on top of absolutely everything. I have to make sure my tenants are always screened, which ties into actually another upside of having a student rental, and that is having co-signers. I have about, I think 4 or 5 of my tenants right now are on co-signers, parent co-signers, meaning their parents actually pay their rent, and that's really, really nice for me. I've actually had a few tenants pay me like 2 to 3 months in advance, which is really, really nice to know that I have a few months in advance. And obviously they don't want their credit to be ruined, they don't want their kids' credit to be ruined, so they're always on time and they're always respectful. Now, the third upside is just having demand. If you have a property that's close enough to campus, there's usually always going to be demand, or someone's always, or students are always going to be looking for an off-campus property. Specifically for me, Grand Canyon University, it's one of the fastest growing universities in the United States, which is a big reason why I got it. They're constantly expanding, there's construction all over the place, and there's not enough housing in the actual campus, so a lot of people are going off campus to look for properties, and that's why I actually bought my properties within like a 30-second walk of the campus, because I knew there was always going to be demand for it. And then the last benefit, students don't really want anything fancy, or they don't require anything fancy, they just want the basics. All of my students have jobs as well as being a full-time student, so they're honestly like never really home. I've had to text a few of my tenants before to like if there's like a laundry issue or something like that, or a plumber, and a lot of the times they're like, I'm not going to be home. I'm like, oh, is so-and-so gonna be home? They're like, no, she works this. So they have very, very busy schedules, and they're rarely home. So they don't really require a whole lot besides having a roof over their head and obviously having a livable, conditioned house, which I obviously take pride in keeping my houses or keeping my properties in good condition. I obviously want my tenants to be happy. So that's pretty much it, guys. I know this was a very, very specific video, so it probably won't get as much views as some of the other general topics that I've talked about on this channel, but I really do appreciate it. If you guys have any questions about student rentals, comment down below, or just being a landlord in general. I'm happy to help. Drop a like if you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.